Who is the most powerful character in Star Wars? Is it Palpatine? Is it Yoda? Is it Nightfall Vader? Is it Dexter Jetster? Okay, maybe not that last one, but today I'll be analyzing the power levels of every major Star Wars character based on what George Lucas himself has stated, while also looking at whether characters were more powerful in the Clone Wars or Imperial era. Starting off with Darth Vader, I actually gave him a 9 out of 10, and while Nightfall Vader, which is what has been labeled to Vader before he is cut up on Mustafar, is by some considered to be the most powerful Star Wars character of all time, even more powerful than Yoda and Sidious, but going with the suited Vader we see during most of his run, I have to go with 9 out of 10 because despite his Force powers possibly being a 10, the way his suit impairs him from dueling and physical strength keeps him at a 9. However, it is important to note that Anakin/Vader had the highest midichlorian count of anyone in Star Wars, which makes sense considering he was the chosen one. Obi-Wan Kenobi has a power level of 8, and as much as it hurts me to give Obi-Wan such a high score, considering I always thought he was significantly weaker than the top dog Jedi like Kit Fisto and Plo Koon, he also has a way too impressive track record and powerful post-Order 66 Force level to ignore. Not only did he defeat Darth Maul, a very powerful Sith, and also defeat General Grievous, a very powerful warrior, but also he grew to enough power as Ben Kenobi to transcend into the Force after his death. Yoda is next up, who has a power level of 10, and next up Yoda was not only the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, but also was the most skilled duelist of the Temple, being able to best Dooku in combat on Geonosis, who was also considered a GOAT of dueling, and Yoda's extreme physical strength and small form granted him a very powerful acrobatic lightsaber form. He also used rare Force abilities like Tuta Minus, and became a Force Ghost after death as well. Next up is Luke Skywalker, who has a power level of 10, and while Luke in the original trilogy never came close to having a 10 out of 10 power level, I mean in A New Hope he was probably a 5 out of 10, in Empire he was about a 6 out of 10, and in Return of the Jedi he was an 8 out of 10 at best. But later in the Legends timeline, Luke as the son of Anakin Skywalker was immensely powerful and is considered by many fans to have actually surpassed Anakin himself in his power, which is a pretty crazy thing. Next up is Han Solo, who has a power level of 4, and here's our first non-Force sensitive figure, Han Solo, who for a human smuggler was very skilled at a gunfight and definitely knew a thing or two about combat. However, he's no Jedi or Sith, and he isn't even really on the same level as a bounty hunter, which puts him here. I'd actually say Han is about the same level as your average clone trooper. And speaking of clone troopers, next is Captain Rex, who has a power level of 5. And Rex showed countless times that not only was he an expert strategist and leader in battle, but he was also not afraid to demonstrate his combat prowess on the front lines, which was showed during events like the Battle of Umbara. Also, by the time of Revenge of the Sith, Rex had fought through the full 3 years of the war, making him much more knowledgeable than most clone superiors. Also from the Clone Wars era, Ahsoka Tano has a power level of 7, and she definitely took a long time to get to this point, but then again, we don't see every Jedi character when they were a Padawan. Even people like Plo Koon were like her at some point. The fact that without completing her training, she was able to take on enemies like Darth Vader years after Order 66 is proof enough that she had a higher power level than many Jedi. Next up is Darth Maul with a power level of 8. Darth Maul, whilst not being as powerful as Count Dooku or Darth Vader, certainly wasn't some weak character by any means, and he was able to take on 2 different Jedi at the same time and nearly destroy them both, if not for his arrogance towards the end of the fight. Palpatine has a power level of 10, Palpatine, however, is considered the most powerful Sith to ever live, and we can see why this is so from his use of powerful dark side abilities like Force Scream and Force Lightning, as well as how he was able to defeat Yoda and bring about the downfall of the entire Jedi Order, something that the Sith had been plotting to have done for centuries upon centuries. Next up is Boba Fett with a power level of 6, and Boba Fett was one of the more skilled bounty hunters to ever live, easily the most powerful of the Imperial era, and learned a great deal from his father Jango Fett, who arguably was not as powerful as. If we were looking at other bounty hunters on this list, I definitely give people like Cad Bane, Bossk, and or Sing a 6 out of 10, whereas characters like Dengar, IG-88, and Imbo would most likely be a 5. Qui-Gon Jinn comes in at a 7 out of 10, and Qui-Gon was never known for his combat skills or physical power in the Force, but despite this fact, I still think people underestimate Qui-Gon, considering he was able to survive to nearly the very end of the duel between him and his apprentice versus a Sith Lord of a higher power level than himself. He was only defeated once he was isolated from his Padawan, and considering this was during an era where the Sith didn't focus their teachings on the Sith, who at this point had been extinct for quite some time, I'd say his performance was quite impressive. Now, to look at whether characters were more powerful in the originals or the prequels, we first off have Vader, who certainly lost power from how his suit impaired his physical movements, although I'd put suited Vader over Anakin as a Jedi any day of the week. Luke, on the other hand, was definitely more powerful as a growing Jedi Knight than as a newborn infant. Yoda definitely became weaker due to his incredibly old age, as by the time of The Empire Strikes Back, Yoda was very close to death. However, Palpatine and Obi-Wan both got more powerful from their growing knowledge and connection to the light and dark sides of the Force. But real quick, here's the Christian advice segment of the video. You can skip to this time if you want to get back to the main video. And for today, I don't actually have a segment from the Bible. However, I do actually have a bit of life advice that I thought I would share with y'all, because obviously coming from a 16-year-old, you really want to know this stuff, right? Now, anyway, life advice is, I mean, you know, some of y'all are probably my age too, so this might be helpful. My advice this time is going to, if you need to work on something and you're like procrastinating or doing anything like that, just tell yourself, I'm gonna work for 20 minutes and then see what happens from there, because I bet you after 20 minutes, you're gonna realize, oh, that wasn't that bad, and I actually feel good having started to work on this. So that's just a pretty good rule that I've been following lately, where if I'm ever procrastinating or anything like that, just work for like the first 20 minutes and it'll be a lot easier to, you know, get the momentum going, rather than like thinking, oh, I have 5 hours of work ahead of me. You can just do 20 minutes and then it's a lot easier. Album of the week is going to Damn by Kendrick Lamar. Also, you can leave a comment on this video if you have any video suggestions, any questions about this video, or just want to tell me how your week has been. Also, check out the merch store for the winter merch, as there are some very cool things on there, and I think maybe it'd surprise you if you just look at the website real quick. You might find something that'd be a good gift for a friend. Also, I upload normal videos every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, shorts every single day. But yeah, back to the video. Next up is Mace Windu with a power level of 10. While not as powerful as Yoda, Mace Windu was still unbelievably skilled with the Force and an amazing lightsaber duelist as well. His most notable achievement was defeating the Dark Lord of the Sith with his self-engineered lightsaber form of the pod, which allowed him to fuel from the dark side energy of an opposing Sith. If only Qui-Gon had used this.
You're so freaking stupid. It's crazy.
Next is General Grievous with a power level of 7. So, turns out Grievous wasn't Force sensitive, so that's a pretty glaring issue right there. However, he was still a Jedi killer that defeated countless knights across the Clone War and was greatly skilled in lightsaber combat, plus his robotic frame enhanced his physical strength and agility to terrifying levels. Next up is Count Dooku, who was a 9 out of 10. Dooku was already one of the most skilled duelists of the galaxy even before he turned to the dark side, and his ability to use Force Lightning and telekinesis fluently on top of his impenetrable Force shield led to Dooku being a very powerful Sith who was able to best Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker on multiple different occasions. Next up is Revan, who had a 10 out of 10 power level, according to me. Revan was a Jedi who was very influential in the wars against the Mandalorians from the Jedi, and he would go on to become a Sith Lord who was imprisoned by the Sith Emperor for centuries before finally helping to defeat him alongside the Jedi, but his soul was split into two halves of light and dark until he was finally able to transcend into the Force. Our last character is Rey, who has a 7 out of 10 power level, and Rey shouldn't have achieved as much skill as she had by the time of her fight with Kylo Ren on Starkiller Base, except for the fact that she was Palpatine's grandchild, which meant she had enhanced potential, and by the Battle of Exegol could take on Palpatine and beat a fairly skilled Darksider in combat, that being Kylo Ren, on the wreckage of the second Death Star. And if you enjoyed this video, you might actually want to see the power levels of every Sith from Star Wars, so if you click this video right here, you can watch just that. But yeah, see ya.